Hey there, Wargamers, Justin here, Painter, and today, boom, I want to talk about the Loki slash Hellbringer. I'd like to welcome you guys back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in today. If you are new here, please alpha strike that like and subscribe button. Smash it like you mean it. Smash it like you're trying to take out that enemy mech. But instead, we're going to focus our energy into helping the channel grow. If you're a returning viewer, thanks for having my six. Thanks for being an awesome lance mate, star mate, whatever applies to you. Thank you for being here, and I appreciate it. That said, today, let's jump into it, and I want to talk about a couple of variants of the Hellbringer that I like to field. The first one that's coming up is going to be the Loki Hellbringer D, coming in at 30 points. He's got a movement of 10, a TMM of 2. Not bad, pretty standard fare for the Clanners Heavy Mechs. 320 for damage, overheat 2, which is pretty nice, which pushes that short and medium range damage to 5-4 respectively. 4 armor, 4 structure, and he's got case, heat 222, and omni. Now let's get into why I like this variant here. Now if you guys have watched my video on baseline mechs, then you're going to know that I like to compare stuff to the Mad Dog that costs 33 points with 333 for damage. If you haven't watched that video, check out the library, the catalog of things that I've rambled about, and that one might be a good one for you to consider and get into my mindset for what I think of when I look at units. Now this guy relative to that Mad Dog is coming in 3 points cheaper. It has 1 less medium range damage, 3 less long range damage, but it sports OV2. So the overheat value is really nice in a pinch if you need it and your back's against the wall and you really need that extra spike of damage. It's nice being able to double your damage at medium, pushing that from a 2 to a 4, and almost double it at short, going from a 3 to a 5. Now, I don't use OV a lot. It is specifically when I'm going to need it, because once you've used that overheat, you're susceptible to your opponent's heat effects if they have infantry stuff that they can apply heat with or other mechs. So your opponent can apply up to 2 heat a turn to one of your mechs, right? If you overheat 2 as well, now you're shut down. That means in the next turn you have to start up, and that means that they get a -4 on hitting you. And in this game, minuses are good, which means at a -4 to hit, they almost can't miss you, which is pretty brutal. So keep it under consideration what you're doing when you overheat, because it can be absolutely devastating for you or for your opponent. So keep that in mind. But that is nice in relation to the Mad Dog, who can't do that. The other thing that's nice is their HP that they bring to the table is pretty similar, and you save 3 points with this guy. So there's a little bit of a trade-off. But what makes this one of my go-to variants? So first of all, it's usable all the way up through the Ill Clan era. And up through the Ill Clan era, it is going to change hands as to what factions can use it, so you'll have to check. But or specifically in the Jihad era and early Republic era, for me, it's usable by Wolf's Dragoons and Clan Wolf, so it is a useful mech for me. It does shift over into being an Inner Sphere usable mech and no longer usable by Clan Wolf or the Wolf's Dragoons at some point, which seems bizarre, but it is what it is. It's another one of those, like, why do these things shift? I don't know. So if you're using it, it may be era specific or maybe faction specific for you, or if your opponents are cool with you having a certain degree of mechs that have been salvaged in combat, there you go. That said, the thing that this guy does that I think is particularly cool, heat 222. So the thing to consider with heat is when you hit a non-mech unit with it, it converts heat into damage. So this guy at short, medium, and long range has heat 222, which means 2 of the 3 points of damage he does at short apply heat, both points of damage at medium apply heat, and at long range he gets to make 2 attack rolls that do 0 damage but apply heat. So he's always effective at annoying mechs with heat, and he is always effective at all range brackets against non-mechs. So let's put this into perspective. He has heat 2 at medium range, right? He rolls 2 dice, each pair, if you're playing that way, which is the way that I play with multiple dice rolls. Each one of those has a potential of dealing 1 heat. So you fire at infantry at medium range, right? For example, you do 2 points of damage. Because he has heat 2, you did 4 points of damage. Every point of damage that he does with heat applied to it, you convert that heat into damage because that unit can't receive an overheat value like a mech can. So he would basically be doubling his damage. Same thing to tanks, VTOLs, everything else, because they don't have a heat value. Against a mech at medium range, because he does 2 damage and 2 heat, if he deals any points of damage, he gets at least 1 point of heat on that unit, which is very, very efficient. And then at short range, same concept. except you'll have one pair of dice that is designated the non-heat because he only has HT2. Now, in the book, it will explain that to you, explain that when you're talking about multiple damage rolls and using special abilities. With heat, you would nominate the pairs of dice or the damage points when you roll, because there's a chance if your damage value exceeds your heat value, you have to be able to know which one was applying the heat and which one wasn't, because they could miss. That is going to also add for a little bit of making sure you have pairs of dice and remembering dictating to your opponent which pair are what before you roll when you go to overheat. It's really easy at medium range when you're only rolling those 2 pairs of dice for damage. Because he has heat 2, you don't really have to declare which one of those is heat, because they're both heat forever and always. That changes if you overheat, though. If you overheat and you go to 3 or 4 damage, now you need to nominate the pairs so that have the heat applied, so that your opponent knows, did you hit with the heat, did you not? And then the same thing at short, you go from 3 to 4, 3 to 5 damage. If you overheat, you really got to specify that. But if you're not overheating, it's pretty straightforward and pretty easy. So he's lean, he's mean, he's cheap, and that heat value is fan-freaking-tastic. It catches people off guard because they don't realize how much he can absolutely shred infantry. The other and non-mechs. The other thing that's really nice with this is don't sleep on heat. For every point of heat that your opponent has on them, they treat their pilot skill or gunnery skill as 1 worse. So if he applies 2 heat to a mech, they go from, if they're standard skill 4, they go from a skill 4 to a skill 6 the next turn. And if they fire any weapons, ranged weapons, they keep the heat. They don't shunt it, right? So you can really decrease the odds of them hitting. You also reduce their movement by 2 points for each point of heat on them. So you can really slow a lot of mechs to a crawl. It's absolutely brutal. If you hit an Atlas with 2 points of heat, he goes from a 6 move to a 2. He's not going anywhere, right? That's absolutely brutal. And if I recall, I think if you have 2 points of heat on you, you minus TMM as well. So like he doesn't have it, but if he did, he's -1 as well. That's absolutely brutal. So don't sleep on that Hellbringer. Little bit of a glass cannon, but he's cheap at 30 points. Absolutely cheap, and he's a sleeper. This unit right here is an absolute sleeper. Now, if you're looking for an alternative and you're not as worried about the heat, the Hellbringer B is a good alternative that I like as well. This one is open to pretty much any, well, I don't say any because I'm looking at the list here. Going into the Republic era, it does shift a little bit. If you're playing Clan Invasion, Civil War, Jihad, you're pretty well good to go with Clanners having access to this variant. Again, I don't know why some of the variants shift over time. Like, why did the Clanners have it in the Succession Wars? Because if you're playing Clanners in Succession Wars, somehow it's listed on the Master Unit list. Through Civil War, they have it, and then once you get into the Dark Age, it starts shifting. Like, did you just throw them all away? What did you do? So if you're playing with opponents or players who are cool with you salvaging a mech or using something that your faction doesn't have listed, cool. If not, you may be error locked. But back to the point at hand. The Hellbringer B. So it's similar to the previous Hellbringer, coming in at 35 points this time. TMM is still the same, 2, movement of 10. It's got a 4/4/2 for damage at short, medium, and long. It's still got 4 armor, 4 structure. Case, it's got flak and omni. The flak is not that important. The big deal is if you're playing in an era that you couldn't use the previous Loki, or perhaps your faction doesn't have access to that in general, right? This one's only 5 points more, right? And if we're considering the baseline mech that we talked about with the Mad Dog coming in at 33, this one is 2 points more than that Mad Dog. It has 1 less point of damage at long range, but it gives up that point of damage to gain 1 more damage at short and medium. That seems like a reasonable trade-off for a 2-point increase in cost. The flak ability he has is almost never going to come up, but what we're considering here is how much did you pay and what does he bring to the table. And whereas the other Loki has heat, which is where it's going to shine, that's the Swiss Army knife, the Swiss ability that he brings to the table. To get to the same damage that the Loki Hellbringer B brings to the table, you'd have to overheat. At medium range, you'd have to overheat 2. At short range, you'd have to overheat 1 to hit his damage value. And he gets to throw 4 points of damage at short or medium every turn unless something happens to him. He does not have to overheat to do it. So the other mech gives you some versatility, saves you 5 points. This mech gives you guaranteed points of damage until he takes a critical or something else every turn, and he's marginally more points than the baseline that we work off of. So if you are considering trying to bring a Hellbringer to your army or your forces, your factions, check out the Master Unit list and check out the Hellbringer D and the Hellbringer B and see if those are lean, mean fight machines that would be good for your factions. And on that note, I think that that's going to bring us to the conclusion of today's ramble about a mech and its variant that I like to bring or like to play. If you've given this guy a shot, either variant at all, sound off in the comments below. Let me know how they worked for you. If it's giving you some considerations or things to think about, also let me know. I'd like to know your thoughts. And if there are other variants of the Hellbringer that you like, sound off. Let me know. There might be some sleepers I haven't thought of with some abilities I haven't seen that might be worth considering. And you don't know what you don't know, so you guys who are also playing, show me as well. I'd love to see what you've dug out of the master unit list and your justifications for why you like what you like. And that'll get my creative juices flowing and let me see stuff too. That said, we're going to sign off today. You guys, thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed. Keep painting your models, keep rolling your dice, and I will catch you guys next time. If you guys are still sitting here watching this, let's take a moment to put a pop-up here to showcase those wonderful Patreon supporters here. We'll let that scroll here, and thank you so much for supporting what I do. That's super awesome. I really do appreciate that.